Penguin Random House Audio presents A River of Stars by Vanessa Hua. Read for you by Jennifer Lim. To My Husband. Prologue. Scarlett Chen could keep a secret. It was everyone else she couldn't trust. Not the passengers in her row, not the flight attendants, not anyone who might give immigration officials a reason to turn her away. As the plane descended into Los Angeles, she tightened her lips. She didn't want to get airsick and risk someone examining her too closely. She had to look 胖子, like any other well-fed Chinese tourist on her way to the Vegas slots. Pressing her fingers against the window, she marveled at the glittering Pacific and the mountain ridges pinched like dumplings. At sunset, the gold slanting light had transformed the coastline into something more beautiful, more possible than anything China had to offer. When the flight attendant announced the local time, she could have just as well said midnight or 6 a.m. After traveling for nearly an entire day, Scarlett had lost all sense of the hour. It felt strange to arrive at almost the same moment she'd left Shenzhen, as though clocks had gone out of order when she crossed the international dateline. She had been much too nervous to sleep on her first trip outside of China, her first time on a plane. She checked her passport, burgundy embossed with gold stars, to reassure herself that the visa hadn't disappeared. In the photo, her eyes were wide and startled by the flash, and if you knew where to look, you could make out the new softness under her chin. She fastened her seatbelt low beneath her swollen belly. Her mouth had gone unbearably dry, but it was too late to hit the call button to ask for water. Her ears were popping from the change in altitude. Soon, the plane would be on the ground, and what she could deny while aloft, she now had to accept. She would go through the rest of her third trimester far from her lover, far from all she'd ever known. Taking a deep breath and closing her eyes, she tried to collect herself. She'd always been solitary, by circumstance and by nature. In the village, the other families had been wary of the power that her mother held over them, and by association, Scarlett. She had never mastered circuitous feminine chatter, lacking the time, patience, or inclination to learn, and now Scarlett would be cloistered among wealthy pregnant wives who would surely disdain a mistress. With a jolt, the plane landed, its tires bouncing and squealing on the tarmac. A few passengers jumped into the aisle, yanking open the overhead bins to get their bags, determined to deplane first. They couldn't escape the peasant within. The elbowing, pushing, and shoving necessary to get ahead in a country of billions. A squat man stumbled and nearly toppled into her row, and she lurched in her seat, shielding herself. Flight attendants shouted at him, ordering everyone to sit down until the plane stopped taxiing. Scarlett didn't need to rush. Her lover had insisted that she check her luggage, worried that she'd endanger their baby by lifting a suitcase above her head. In the terminal, she smoothed her flowing tunic and hitched up her baggy pants. She rinsed out her mouth at the bathroom sink and ran her fingers through her hair, trying to look respectable. As she waited in line at passport control, she fought the urge to rest her hands on her belly. Despite the air-conditioned chill, Scarlett was sweating. She fanned herself. Studying the line of booths, she prayed she'd get an officer who wouldn't ask too many questions. One who wouldn't recognize the signs that betrayed the latter stages of pregnancy, the pimples on her chin and the flashes of heat and wooziness that hit without warning. Her bump remained hidden, and her paperwork was in order, she reminded herself, even if she was bending the rules on her visa. When the officer waved her over, she strode toward him, her gaze direct and her head held high, just like she'd been told, just like she'd practiced. He looked through her passport. First time in the U.S.? Scarlett nodded. Yes. She held herself so tightly she felt she might snap. Why are you visiting? he asked. How long do you plan to stay? Her baby kicked her in the ribs, so hard she almost swayed on her feet. Chapter 1. When Boss Yeung first told her about Perfume Bay, she tossed the brochure onto the dashboard and reached for a slice of dried mango. Shaking his head, he took the bag, but before he could stop her, she snatched a slice of chewy sweetness. During her pregnancy, he'd begun scrutinizing her, prescribing advice, some backed by science but most by superstition, to protect the baby. She shouldn't eat mangoes, as their heat would give the baby bad skin. No watermelon, whose chill would cool her womb. No bananas, which would cause the baby to slip out early. No water chestnuts, mung beans, or bean sprouts either. The list of traditional prohibitions grew each time she attempted to eat. As he drifted into the next lane, she told him to keep his eyes on the road. He gripped the steering wheel and told her his plan. He wanted to send her and their unborn child halfway around the world to Perfume Bay, 5-star accommodations located outside of Los Angeles. After she delivered, staff would file for a social security card, birth certificate, and passport for the baby. Their son, his sex recently confirmed, would give them a foothold in America. Eventually, he could sponsor our green cards, Scarlett had responded. For now, you'll get rid of me. Clever plan, Boss Yeung. At the factory, she called him Boss Yeung, and she kept it up in private, too. A reminder that she was a deputy manager and not a xiaojie, a mistress, a gold digger from a disco or a hostess bar. They passed factories covered in grimy white tile, built on land that had been fields when she arrived here as a teenager. People from around the country had moved to the Pearl River Delta, just across the border from Hong Kong, to make their fortunes, and the factory girl you snubbed might someday become your manager. Boss Yeung reached into the glove box for a brand new U.S. atlas that he must have hand-carried from Hong Kong. Hope unfurled in her chest. She always navigated on their weekend drives, and with this gift, she pictured them traveling across America together. Whatever hospital you deliver in would be top class, he said. The hospitals are good in Hong Kong, too, she said. Unlike in China, the government wouldn't hassle her there for being an unwed mother, wouldn't fine her or force her to terminate her pregnancy. Women there could have as many children as they wanted. Boss Yeung frowned. Hong Kong was also home to his wife and 3 daughters. It doesn't matter how good the hospitals are in America if I end up in jail, she said. She had conceived even though Boss Yeung had pulled out, evidently not soon enough. For once, the method had failed them. Her periods had never been regular, and she'd been into her 2nd trimester before realizing her nausea wasn't the stomach flu and her heartburn wasn't from the stress of trying to meet production goals. On the radio, a newscaster announced that the U.S. Embassy was evacuating American tourists from Egypt. Boss Yeung stabbed his finger at the radio dial. The U.S. would save our son. From Egypt? Why would he go to Egypt? From anywhere. The U.S. would get him out of trouble anywhere. That was when Scarlett had realized just how much his son meant to Boss Yeung, reviving the dream that had died with the birth of his daughters, an heir to carry on his legacy. He had never shared this dream with her. For a boy in his image, a prince of the family. He was almost 60, she was 36. If Scarlett carried a girl, would Boss Yeung have sent her to Perfume Bay? No. He'd waited to book her stay until he knew she was having a boy, but objecting to such a preference would have been like objecting to gravity. He sped up, picking off tractor trailers and buses, which still gave her a thrill. Faster and faster they went, getting so far ahead it seemed they might have the road's end to themselves. With him behind the wheel, she might go anywhere. He put his hand on top of hers, lacing their fingers together, and she tucked her head against his shoulder. She never felt more complete than when nestled against him. If she didn't have this baby, she might never have one, not with Boss Yeung or with anyone else. On her own, Scarlett could have expected deference and attention. One pregnant woman gets a seat on the bus, the front of the line at the bathroom, and
Sample complete. Ready to continue?